I'm welcoming this morning Michel Bouman from Microsoft. His full title is EMEA Senior Solutions Specialist Lead for Teams and Devices. Michel, welcome. It's lovely to talk to you, as always. Just tell us a little bit about your role, if you will.
Yeah, so my name is indeed Michel Bouman. You did great on that pronunciation of my last name. I'm also impressed by the way you pronounce the role, because we was just telling before we started the recording is that the title has become such a long title that sometimes people leave out words because it's just too much. But what it comes down to as a solution specialist lead is I have the privilege to lead the solution specialists. We look after Microsoft partners and we try to help and train them on the story around Microsoft Teams rooms. And I am privileged to do that for the EMEA region, which means Europe, the Middle East, and Africa. And that also means that we get insights from about, let's say, 140 countries around the world. And it's interesting to see in what stages different parts of the world are when it comes to hybrid work and hybrid meetings. So it's a lot of fun. I've been in Microsoft for 10 years, been enjoying every day of the ride.
Brilliant. And out of interest, you say you've got 140 countries. Where would you say the UK is on the journey? Are we leading? Are we at the back of the pack? Whereabouts do we sit, do you think?
No, you're definitely somewhere in the, let's say, the top 5, top 4, maybe even. So Netherlands or Benelux, Nordics, and the UK, I think are doing really well. Then followed by maybe Germany, France. The Emirates are making a big boost right now. If you look at their growth, it's really impressive, and especially the investments that they're doing around experience centers. Because I think, and I'm sure we'll get into product in a second, I think that it's not really about the technology, right? And I think what people in the Dubai area do well is they turn features into experiences, which I think really drives the biggest difference.
Moving on then, front row obviously is a big thing for Microsoft moving forwards. You've put out some text around spatial audio. What are the plans for front row? Just give us a kind of insight into where Microsoft's thinking there.
Yeah, let's start with the importance of front row and why it's even there. And the way I like to explain it is, if you, after you've watched this video, you go to your favorite streaming platform, or maybe there's a football match on TV, and go watch how the director films the actors and actresses or football players. So if they want you to feel part of the scene, they'll always film the eyes, right? 80 to 90% of our communication is nonverbal. So getting that eye contact is very important. So if they want you to be part of a scene in a television series or in a movie, they'll film the eyes so you can feel the emotion. If they don't want you to be a participant but want you to be a spectator, they'll always film from afar or above. I know nothing about football. I know there's this guy named Van Dijk. I think he's playing for one of the teams in the UK. His first name is Virgil. He's a great defender. That's all I know about him. But right before he takes that free kick, they'll film his eyes to make you feel the emotion that he's feeling at that moment before he tries to score that free kick. If they want you to be more of a participant, they'll film you from afar or above so you can see the full field. Take this concept back into the meeting room. You want to be sure that people can see each other, but that people also are seen. And that's why eye gaze is so important. And that's why front row is such an important layout in the Teams Rooms application. So where are we going next with front row? We just released a couple of very exciting things. One is we removed the backgrounds from all the participants on the front row layout. So that's important because you don't want to be distracted by stuff that's happening behind them. Plus, they're really, you also feel like they're popping out of the screen a little bit to make it feel like you're in the room with them. Another thing that we're doing is we're adding AI noise suppression, which means that if there's an annoying noise in the room, maybe somebody's ticking a pen on the table, we've all been there, or maybe eating something, that those sounds get annoying. So we can filter all that stuff out. But you mentioned spatial audio, and spatial audio is also very important. Again, I'll use it as an explanation of a little bit of storytelling. So when you go out or you're at an event and you have a one-to-one conversation with someone, even though there's a lot of noise around you, you'll always be able to have that conversation without being distracted by all the noise. And that's because of the way that audio hits our ears and then our brains. That is called the cocktail party effect. And that is also what spatial audio does. So with spatial audio, we leverage the left and right channels of the stereo speaker. And if somebody on front row speaks from the left, the audio will be coming from the left. And if somebody's speaking from the right, the audio will be coming from the right. This also reduces meeting fatigue. So if you would have somebody speaking from the left, but the audio would come from the middle, it's very unnatural to our brain. Right? So now it eases the stress on the brain a little bit. And if the audio is coming, the person sitting on the left, the audio is coming from the left as well.
Brilliant. What about just screens out of interest? Obviously, the front row works brilliantly on a 21:9 aspect screen, and we've started deploying those in a big way. Will that change? Will there be a 32:9 screen or anything?
Oh, so technically, you could do 32:9 if you want to. If you add two, or it's actually a little bit large. If you add two 16:9 displays next to each other, you have that 32:9 ratio. So we're already seeing in the field that people are looking at LED walls, as an example, where they do have 2 times 16:9 to get that 32:9 dimension. But the 21:9 is very interesting because what you want to do is you want to, again, make sure that everybody feels engaged in that meeting. You want to create inclusive and immersive meetings. So if you are watching a meeting on a 21:9 display, on the left-hand side, you'll see the hands raised. If somebody at home raises their hand, you'll see that immediately. And if there's any chat in the meeting going on, you'll see that on the right side of the screen. So you'll always be aware of what's happening on the virtual part of that meeting. Now, there's also a lot of people that do not have 21:9 displays yet and are still using 16:9. What we do if you use front row in 16:9, we're removing the left pane and you'll only see the right pane. You can customize that to see whatever you want to see on that part of the screen. There's also one exciting thing that I like. Some of the feedback that we received in terms of front row is that people were saying if we're not sharing any content, there's this big black box, which is kind of making the screen estate or the display estate useless. What we're doing now is we're putting the active speaker right there in that place, so you'll always have some content in that big black box that's right there in the middle.
Brilliant. I watched Ignite recently, and Ignite spoke a lot about Copilot. Is Copilot coming to the Teams room?
100%, yes. So it's already there. So what you're seeing now, and there's one of them in right here behind me, more and more people and OEMs are starting to release 360 degrees cameras, right? Go back to you being in a meeting, you're dialing in virtually, and let's say that there are 4 people in the room. At some point, people will have that conversation at the table. And what they'll do is they'll turn sideways, and you're now looking at the side of my face. Think back of the eye gaze and how important that is. It's difficult to build a connection like this. Yeah. So what these cameras do is they're able to see that somebody's looking at that camera, so we'll change the view. Now, why is this important? We can also start doing facial and voice recognition with these cameras. There are some cameras that are only in the front of the room that do the same thing. So now, let's say there are 4 people in the room. It's Katie, it's Jim, and 2 other people. Now you can see that Katie is there because the camera will recognize Katie and will recognize Jim. Take this to Copilot. So now you can ask, what did Katie say about the meeting? Previously, you couldn't do that because it would only see conference room, boardroom in the transcription. But now you'll see exactly who's in that room thanks to facial and voice recognition. So we are bringing Copilot into the meeting.
And will you extend that? Will Copilot be able to pick up to-do lists or produce you meeting minutes, for instance?
Yeah, so the last one, yes, and that's already there, right? So if you are a user that has a Copilot license, if you have Copilot in Teams, you can already ask, write the meeting notes for me. So the way I use Copilot, and I've been privileged to use it since July, August. The way I use it the most is in Teams. I ask questions about the meeting when for instance, I'm a little bit late. So let's say I'm joining the meeting 5 minutes late. Previously, I had to ask, so what was discussed? Did you already discuss the new features for front row? And now I can just ask Copilot, were the features for front row discussed, yes or no? And it'll say no. And I can ask, create a table of the topics that were discussed. and who raised those topics and what decisions were made on those topics. And I'll get a full table with those answers. And then in the end, you don't need to create the meeting notes anymore. You simply ask Copilot to create them for you. What I love is something that we announced at Ignite, is how you can make people and AI work together now. So I have somebody on my team that loves to take notes. That's the way that she remembers the most important things from a meeting. And I would love to talk to you about meetings in itself, because I think we're doing it wrong. She loves to take notes in a meeting. But sometimes she gets so distracted with taking notes that she misses parts of that meeting. But she might have picked up that Miguel said something interesting about customer insights. Now she can go back and ask Copilot to add Miguel's comments about customer insights to her notes, so people can really collaborate with the AI. So there's a lot of exciting stuff happening around Copilot, and it's all happening so fast.
So we've spoken briefly about Copilot. Tell us what your plans are. What's kind of still to come? What's the thinking within Microsoft at the moment?
Yeah, so there are two things that we announced around Copilot during Microsoft Ignite a couple of weeks ago. One is collaborative notes, where you can work together with the AI, but also integrating Copilot into the whiteboard. So let's say you're having a meeting and you ask Copilot for the meeting notes or the recap so far, and then Copilot will give you that recap, and then with one push of a button, you can take the meeting notes and visualize those into whiteboard, which makes it such a fun and interactive way on collaborating with your teammates. And I think going forward, I mean, a lot of people are just starting with Copilot, right? So I've been privileged to use it for a while. But a lot of people are just starting, and what I like most is how much benefit people are already seeing. So I'm saving about 45 minutes a day, I think, using Copilot for Microsoft 365, which is a lot of time. So I've become a lot more productive. And then people always ask me, Michel, is AI gonna replace us? I think the answer is no, but I definitely think that people that use AI smarter and in a better way than you do, they will probably replace you, because I'm just so much more productive. I'm more creative. I'm better at Excel. I create better PowerPoint slides. I create better business reviews because Copilot is helping me structure sentences in a certain way. I'm a non-native speaker, right? And we speak constant English. So sometimes if you look at, so my vocabulary is okay, but my executive summaries, for example, in my business reviews, they could be a little bit more executive. So I asked Copilot to help me make them more executive. And after only a couple of months of usage, I'm already seeing that my vocabulary is going up as well. So like I said, I'm a better writer. I'm better with data. I'm more creative. I'm more productive and all that because of Copilot.
So that's a fascinating thing I've just picked up there, that you don't think AI will replace people, but people who use AI will replace others. So yeah, it's going to be enabling tool. Does that mean that the way that we structure meetings, do you think is going to change? The whole meeting experience will change?
Oh, so let me warn you, because I might go on a little bit of a rant right now. I have a very strong opinion about meetings, right? So there's some research that's been done that's saying that if you are on a meeting with more than 7 people, the productivity of that meeting goes down with 10%. Instead of meeting that you were on with 25 people last Monday as the weekly kickoff, which a lot of companies still do, that was completely useless for most people. If you would schedule a meeting with me, that meeting will always be 20 minutes. That's it. And then people say, but Michel, 20 minutes is not enough. Well, we shouldn't use meetings to inform each other. We should have meetings to make decisions, right? So I look at meetings more from a life cycle perspective. So you have a before the meeting, a during the meeting, and an after the meeting. So before the meeting, you prepare, right? Send me everything, the same as we prepared this recording, right? Send me everything I need to know before we start the recording, and I'll make sure I come to the session prepared, right? All of this is non-scripted because I'm weird that way, but everything we needed to discuss, we did that before the meeting. The meeting itself, I'll get back to Copilot in a second. The meeting itself we use to make decisions. We don't use them to inform. We can inform on Teams or whatever platform you use it. We use it to make decisions. And then one of the decisions might be, okay, Michel will create the PowerPoint deck. And that's where I use the following up on the task. So before, during, and after the meeting. So after the meeting, I start creating those PowerPoint slides. So people then ask me, but aren't I still spending 60 minutes on that one meeting? Well, the answer is no, because flow is such an important thing. I like to start working at 9:15ish, right? I take my kids to school, I walk the dog, and then I start. I have somebody on the team that likes to start working at 5. So he works between 5 and 7, has breakfast, goes to the gym, comes back, and then ends the day a little bit early. He's delivering his best performance between 5 and 7, where he prepares for meetings, looks at some of his action points, follows up on emails and chats. Right? So flow is such an important thing. And if we bring this back to Copilot, the way I start my day is I ask Copilot in Teams, help me prepare for today's meetings, and write 2 to 3 bullets per meeting of stuff that I need to know. And then Copilot will draft my full calendar, my full day for me, and I come to meetings super prepared. We use the meeting to make decisions, and then afterwards, Copilot writes the notes for me, and I can follow up on my tasks. Right. So think more of meetings as a life cycle. If you cannot bring your meetings back from an hour, which is the average, from an hour to 20 minutes, start with 45 minutes, and then the 15 minutes you get back, don't use that to do email. Right? I'm in my home office right now. There's a window right behind me, and even though it's freezing out there, I still use those 15 minutes to open the window and get a little bit of fresh air, or walk downstairs and say hi to my wife and kids, or whatever. Do something that has nothing to do with work. Because as human beings, we are great at sprinting, but then we need to rest. So we cannot do back to back to back to back to backs for months and months on end. Right? So again, a little bit of a rant. Rethink meetings, no more than 7 people. Try to scale them back to 20, 25 minutes. And don't use meetings to inform people, use meetings to make decisions.
Wow. So there's a whole adoption piece here. How do Microsoft see that happening? Are we going to see a bunch of training sessions springing up, or do you think people will naturally adopt this?
That's an interesting question. So if you go to adoption.microsoft.com, there's a lot of stuff out there that you can use. What I'm seeing is that because it's generative AI and it's through natural language, it all comes kind of natural. I think less than 5% of and don't fact check me on this, but I think less than 5% of all features in Microsoft 365 are currently being used because people just don't know where to find them. Right? Like in Excel, I'm good with data. I'm just not that good with the visualization part. I always have to search. Is it under insert, under data? Sometimes I go to YouTube to find out how I create that visualization again. Now I just ask Copilot, create the 5 most relevant visualizations with this data and put it in a new tab. I hit enter, 5 seconds later, I have my graphs and I can start using them. Right? And I was speaking to somebody who's specialized in technology and different generations. And what she was saying is that older generations are more likely to do well with generative AI because older generations are so used to saying exactly what they want. Write 2 paragraphs on this topic with this tone of voice, using these words and highlight these points. And that's exactly how you use generative AI. And then you hit enter and Copilot just starts writing that for you. Right? So it's the adoption feels so much more natural. The trickier part is, do you trust what Copilot is doing for you? What I love about Copilot is that if it makes a statement, like for example, if I would ask, write the meeting notes for this session, I would get the meeting notes, but I would also see an annotation that I can click on, and then it'll show me how Copilot got to that conclusion. And now a few months in, I'm fully trusting the model with everything that I do. But it's still a Copilot. Right? Yeah. So if I ask Copilot to write a SWOT analysis on a value proposition that I just built, on a marketing plan that I just created, Copilot will create a SWOT analysis. But I might see some things where I'm like, no, that should be different. I'll change it because it's a Copilot. I was at an event the other day, a smaller event, and there were some professors in the room, some teachers. And they said, well, I don't think I can use this for my work. So, well, what kind of class do you give? It's a math class. Okay, well, let's prepare a 45-minute math class using Copilot. Now we only
Yeah.
have 5 minutes left. Well, let's see how far we get. Right, so we started prompting. That's how you call the text that you put in there. So we started prompting. I said, you're an experienced math teacher. I said, sir, what kind of class? 9 to 10-year-olds. Okay, 9 to 10-year-olds. What's the topic? Well, this is the topic. It should be 45 minutes. Ask questions before you give me answers. It asked me 5-6 questions. I hit enter and I have the class ready and prepared. So the math teacher's like, I just changed my mind. This is actually quite good. So I was all happy. And then 10 seconds later, he's like, no, wait. There's something I should do different. I said, that's why you're a math teacher. Right? You know your stuff. Right? And it's a Copilot. So you stay in full control. So that small piece, you change. It takes you 10 minutes to change, but you just saved yourself 2 hours.
Brilliant. So I was going to ask whether there was going to be more integration between the meeting room experience or the meeting experience and 365 generally, SharePoint, etc. But it sounds like you're going to just let Copilot take care of that for everybody, because the integration, it sounds like, is deeper than I appreciated.
So what's great about Copilot is that it's fully integrated with what we call the Microsoft Graph. And the Microsoft Graph is the data layer underneath all the Microsoft services. Right, so that's where all your documents and all your emails and all your files and all your chats and all your meetings, everything, all your SharePoints, everything sits in the graph. And that's not new. That's always been there. And because it's in the Microsoft Cloud, all the rules that you set up around security and compliance and privacy are still there. And so if you have access to a file that I don't have access to, Copilot will not all of a sudden give me access to that file. So I can ask questions about that file, but Copilot won't give me any answers. However, you can ask questions about that file, and then you'll get your answer. Right? So Copilot is always your Copilot that only has access to things that you have access to. And because of this deep integration, you can ask questions about all your documents. Right?
So would Copilot warn you that it wasn't giving you a full answer because you didn't have access to stuff, or would it just give you an answer based on what you're allowed to see?
It's always giving you a full answer, but it's always giving you a full answer based on what you have access to.
Okay.
Right? So it's not, it can't tell you anything that it doesn't know. And we don't train your data with the large language model. That's not how it works. Right? So we keep everything separated. And I think that's what people appreciate about Copilot as well. If they've made a conscious decision to work in the Microsoft Cloud. Right? So they did multiple checks on, hey, does Microsoft live up to data security for my organization? Yes or no? The answer is yes, tick the box. Right? Does it comply with the rules that we have in the industry? Well, assuming they tick that box because they're a Microsoft customer. Right? So you've already done that check on privacy, compliance, and security. So that way it's an easy start. What you need to look into is, how am I currently sharing data? That's a whole another topic. But no, you only have access to what you have access to, and Copilot will give you a full answer based on those insights.
So moving on to hardware, what are the hardware innovations? You've mentioned briefly 360-degree cameras that I wanted to talk about, but what other kind of hardware innovations are you expecting to see, and how closely are Microsoft talking to the various hardware vendors out there?
Yeah, so we're talking to all hardware vendors. It is still up to them to come up with new form factors and new devices. And when they do so, we still certify. Right? So we always talk about Teams Room certified devices. And there are now, I think, 12, 13, maybe 14 certified OEMs out there. Don't ask me to name them because I'll probably forget one, and I don't want to look bad on camera. So we certify, and certification is pretty strict. So I think it's a 160-page spec that they have to comply with. And so what happens if one of the OEMs comes up with a new device, they send it to our independent test centers. We have a couple of them around the world, and we test to see if they comply with the rules that we have around certified devices. And there are a couple of important things when it comes to certification. Audio and video, obviously very important. Very important that different products work together. So if you would have vendor A for the camera, vendor B for microphones, vendors for the compute, all of them should work together. So there are multiple things that they have to, that the device has to live up to. If they comply and we check and we agree that everything is as it's supposed to be, then we'll put the stamp on it. If not, we'll send it back, and then we'll ask the OEMs to fix it. So we are quite strict. You can ask any OEM how we deal with that kind of stuff. The latest innovations are very much around AI. So how are we integrating artificial intelligence, not just Copilot, into these cameras? And that's why things like we discussed earlier, intelligent audio, intelligent video, being able to do speaker recognition and voice recognition, having the 360 camera in the room and making it smart enough so that if somebody's looking in the camera that's on the table, they use that camera. But if somebody then starts looking at the front of room display, that the camera switches to the front of room display. That's the intelligence that's now coming to these devices.
So, out of interest, chicken and egg question. I know what tends to happen. Do the vendors tend to come up with a new piece of hardware, or does it tend to be software concept led that the vendors then deliver the hardware to deliver that function?
I think it goes kind of both ways. And so there's such a close collaboration. We have this place in Redmond in the US, which is called the Hive, which is essentially where we invent meeting rooms. You might be like, inventing meeting rooms, that sounds weird. But you have people walking around there with cardboard, trying to find out what the right shaped table is. You've probably seen the images from Microsoft where we have the gumdrop or guitar pick shaped table in the room again to create that eye gaze that is so important in a meeting. Find out what's the ultimate display, where should it be placed, how high, how far, which cameras, what's missing. And then we go back to the OEM, say, hey, so this might be a form factor you might want to invest in because now we can do X, Y, and Z. And then some will pick up on it, some won't. But there's also a lot of innovations with the OEMs themselves.
So what do you, if you were going to wave a magic wand and look into the future, what do you think is going to be the new big thing in the meeting room hardware-wise? What's going to change?
That's such a tough question. So I've had various forms of this question over the past few weeks. Somebody started with saying, what will meeting rooms look like in 10 years? At the pace where that development is going at, it's difficult to even predict where we're going to be in 2 years, right? And so I think the adoption of AI in the meeting rooms is going to play a big role in the next, let's say, year and a half. That's not going to take long. And then who knows what's next? I don't really have the answer to that. But again, the pace of innovation is at a crazy high right now.
Just extending that idea, what about VR? Do you think that's going to come into the meeting room?
100%. I'm on an EMEA team. I don't have any, I wanted to say friends, but that sounds so sad. I don't have any peers that are here in the Netherlands. So I work internationally all the time. I haven't seen my full team in like 6-7 months. Fun fact, about to see them again next week, so I'm looking forward to it. But we've been using Microsoft Mesh a lot. So Microsoft Mesh is a VR world. You've probably seen the avatars in Teams or in new Teams. And hopefully you've played around with that a little bit. But now we're releasing what we call immersive spaces. Both immersive spaces and custom immersive spaces. So the way that we do our meetings, especially for onboarding, social gatherings, or maybe all hands meetings, we meet in a VR world. And we can walk around in that world like we would in an office. We can all gather around together. But then sometimes you might want to have that side conversation. So you can walk away from everyone. And even though you're in the same meeting, you will not hear the other people speaking anymore. You can have that one-to-one conversation. It's something you need to experience, I think, to really understand it. But we use it all the time. So VR is going to be a big player, especially for teams that are not all in the same place or are not often all seeing each other. It's fun to do it with the VR headsets, but you can do it without VR headsets as well. That's how many of the people on my team are using it. But it's definitely coming to meetings.
I was going to ask how that would actually feel, how that was actually going to work, because I can understand VR goggles for an individual user sitting at their desktop as you, but I'm sitting in a meeting room. How would it work in a meeting room if I had some people here and some remote participants?
Right, so you can still walk around with your keyboard in that virtual world. It's something you need to experience. It's difficult to explain, but you feel a sense of connection. And the first 2 minutes are kind of awkward because you're all like a cartoon figure without legs walking around this immersive space. But then before you know, it's kind of like your brain switches, and then all of a sudden you're in that immersive space. You feel so connected to the avatars that you're seeing there. Again, it's something you need to experience. And if you are on a team that's not together often, try playing around with Microsoft Mesh. Avatars available now, immersive spaces coming in January.
So, if a user right now is looking to develop their strategy as to how they're going to put meeting rooms in place, what would be on your checklist? What would you be advising people to be thinking about if they're going to come up with their team strategy and their estate or meeting room strategy as to what they were going to deploy?
Yeah, so if we look at the number of people that are going back to the office in the UK, it's only 33%. Right, so 33% of the people are going back to the office, and all the other work is taking place somewhere else. Could be with customers, could be somewhere, but most of the people will be in their home office. So, but still, I think your best collaboration and brainstorming and team building is done in person. And so, if you are on a team that likes to work together, being in the same room is definitely a must. If you ask me, don't force people to come back to the office. Give people a good reason to come to the office. And a good reason is no longer a good cup of coffee, because we can get that at home as well. It's no longer the nice display that you have on your desk, because a lot of people now have that at home as well. It's really having a place where you can meet each other. So the role of the office itself is changing from a place where we go to work to a place where we go to meet and collaborate and really put our brain to work. So when I go to the office, I only go there to meet people. When I need to do Teams, Word, PowerPoint, Excel, Outlook, and all the other stuff, I do it right here in my little home office, and I'm perfectly fine. But sometimes I just want to see people. So I go with that intention to the office, and that's where I meet people. Now, when it comes to the meeting rooms, don't build those meeting rooms for the people that are in the office. Build the meeting rooms for the people that are not in the office. So what do I mean by that? We have this concept called signature rooms. And a signature room ensures that everybody is included on that meeting, so that you can drive full immersive and inclusive meetings. We spoke earlier about the gumdrop shaped table in a room. We spoke earlier about having a 21:9 display on that wall. We spoke earlier about the importance of Teams rooms and native Teams rooms and certified devices. All that coming together is ensuring that those that are dialing in, and in the UK, 2 out of 3 meetings will have at least one virtual participant, to make sure that that virtual participant also feels included in that meeting. So that's kind of a different way of thinking, right? So don't create the meeting room for the people that are in the meeting room, create them for the people that are not there. Once you go in with that mindset, it's going to make it a lot easier for everybody to feel included. Now, next step is you need to think about technology. And we haven't spoken a lot about that, because I believe that technology always follows. It's always people first, right? So think about people, think about behavior, think about culture, and start there, and then technology follows. So when you think about technology, make a decision. Am I going with Teams rooms on Windows? Am I going with Teams rooms on Android? Maybe I'm going for a board, right, where I can co-create. All that depends on the room. So if you have a small room, you likely won't go with a board. You'll probably go with Android or Windows. With Android, you get everything in one box. You don't need to have extra compute. That's all in that box. You don't need to have separate speakers. Everything is in one box. The app, basically the same. We work towards feature parity. Most things will come to Windows first, simply because it's easier to code on Windows than it is to Android. But we're trying to get many features to Android as well. If you are in a bigger room, let's say a boardroom, and you need to have extensions like microphones and speakers, that's when you most likely want to go with Windows. And then go with whatever OEM you have a relationship with, or ask TenAV to advise you on what hardware to use. Right? And then again, going back to the certification, we certify devices for certain rooms. So if you would go with device X, it'll probably be certified for, or might be certified only for a medium-sized room. And that's for a reason, right? So work with a partner to help them advise you on what kind of equipment you need in that room. Don't just think about the boardroom, right? I know most CXOs want the fancy boardroom with all the fancy features, and And a lot of people come to us and say, can we do pan, zoom, tilt? And can we control the lights and the blinds? Oh, that sounds great for us nerds. That's a compliment. I'm a nerd myself. But the average user doesn't care less. Keep meetings as simple as can be. When a person with no technical expertise walks into what we call native Teams room, they see the console laying on the table, they see the name of their meeting there, and what they also see is a button that says join. They push that button and they're in that meeting. Right? So don't make the room overcomplicated. Keep meetings as simple as possible. You want people to be productive. You don't want to spend 6-7 minutes on trying to figure out how the device works. Keep meetings simple. So I think 3 takeaways. 1, create the meeting rooms not for the people that are there, but for the people that are not there. 2, work with a partner to figure out which hardware you need in that room. And then 3, don't overcomplicate it. Keep meetings as simple as can be.
Michel, that was brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. It's always a pleasure talking to you. I hope we can do this again very soon. And it's been fascinating listening to everything you've had to say.
Good stuff. Thanks so much for having me. I'm looking forward to the next one already.